Hey, welcome to 7-Eleven, Devotion 7-Eleven, that is. We're in the book of Esther. And as we're in our devotions, the devotions come from numerous texts across the Old Testament, from 2nd Chronicles and Isaiah. We're going to go from Ezra, and we're going to show how God is the one who established this function of the throne of Persia centuries before Esther was even born. How God, even though he is unnamed in the book of Esther, is absolutely to be given full credit for the redeeming events. How what God does when he uses the kingdom of Persia to save the people of God in the Old Testament is not even the first time that God's done this through Persia. In our first devotion in this series, day before yesterday, we came from the penultimate verse in the book of 2nd Chronicles. Now we look at the final verse of 2nd Chronicles. We saw 2nd Chronicles 36 verse 22, and this is what follows and then concludes the book of 2nd Chronicles. This is what King Cyrus of Persia says. The Lord, the God of the heavens, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build him a temple at Jerusalem in Judah. Any of his people among you may go up, and may the Lord his God be with him. Now, we saw the Cyrus cylinder on display at the British Museum, and that seems to give a different account. There, Cyrus seems to be giving credit to Marduk, a Babylonian god, for helping him overcome the Babylonians, and then thereafter even set the Jewish people free. So what's the deal? Cyrus seems to be talking out of both sides of his mouth. Exactly. Cyrus doesn't worship God, which means he doesn't really believe in God. And with his own historians, he will say something bizarre, right? Like, Marduk allowed me to overcome the Babylonians. It's like, bro, Marduk is a Babylonian god. But according to 2nd Chronicles, he says something quite different. This is what King Cyrus of Persia says. And doesn't this remind you a little bit of what we saw in Isaiah yesterday? I've heard Trump conveyed to Cyrus before, and I think it's plausible, because I don't think that Trump, for what it's worth, nobody cares about my speculation, so I'll keep this just a few seconds long. I think that if Trump really believed in God, if he really worshiped the Lord, if one of my heroes, James Dobson, was right, then he wouldn't have had to pay off pornographic actresses. He wouldn't own like seedy institutions and things like that. But I do see how, even despite his embarrassing bluster, he also accomplishes some pretty good stuff along the way. That's a little bit Cyrus-y. This guy that doesn't worship God, but whom God uses. And look at the Supreme Court justices whom Trump appointed. They overturned Roe versus Wade. It's no small thing. That's no small legacy, even for a guy like Trump. And so I think there could be some merit to it. I know that ultimately every authority that exists is established by God. And for the record, as the primaries are coming up, can we please just nominate someone who's not an embarrassment? Moving on back to the biblical text. Here's Isaiah chapter 41. I have stirred up one from the north, and he has come, one from the east who invokes my name. He will march over rulers as if they were mud, like a potter who treads the clay. Who told about this from the beginning so that we might know, and from times past so that we might say he is right? No one announced it, no one told it, no one heard your words. I was the first to say to Zion, look, here they are, and gave Jerusalem a herald with good news. So everything about Cyrus's work for the people of God was prophesied by God's prophets. Jeremiah foretold of it. We're going to look at those prophecies. Isaiah prophesies it here in chapter 41, and we're going to continue to expound upon this text. And the point of calling it before it happens, there's nothing in the Babylonian text that says this. Nothing else in the British Museum points to this. The point of saying it before it took place. The book of Isaiah is way older than the Cyrus cylinder, and it names Cyrus, for crying out loud. The whole point, according to this biblical text, of calling it before it happens is to show the sovereignty of God on full display. Founding from the very onset the kingdom where Esther finds herself queen. There's more to this. I'll tell you tomorrow.